Thanks everybody for having me for this talk. I don't know where the frontispiece has gone to, but it's the title is Orchid Species. Oh, what is it called now? I changed it so many times. I didn't want to talk about the full amount of orchids that could potentially be available to us in Royal. I very much concentrating on getting us out there in autumn and winter to see what might be in flower. So I've focused on, instead of on 46 genera, different genuses, I've just focused on 12, and that list that you have is 12 genera with a whole stack of species. So there's about 36 or something there. So I will eventually get around to talking about each of them, but initially I'm going to talk about something else. But should I just wait a bit, Dave, or because I'd like to show some pickies?
I would go with it.
How do I go with it?
Oh, you're going through. You've got my screen, of course. Well, maybe give me 30 seconds.
Okay. So this talk is dedicated to Margaret Bradhurst, who wrote the book on the orchids of the southern Sydney area. Yeah. Native orchids of southern Sydney. It's also based on another book called Orchid Species of the Shoalhaven by a fellow called Alan Stevenson, who has passed away now. Very much a orchid conservationist. And it's also based on the god of orchids in Australia, which is David Jones. And that's one of his small books. He's got several larger books than that. And that's one of the original volumes, and he's up to third edition of that one now, which is a very beautiful book. So I just wanted to dedicate this talk to Margaret, who has helped me put it together. I'm basically mimicking what's in her book, and I've subsetted it for this season. Here we go. And those that don't know Margaret may not realise what a gentle and amazingly fine artist she is, and her eye for detail is incredible. So her photos in the book don't really do that justice, but if you ever get to speak to Margaret about her collection of both photos and records of orchids, she knows every track in this place and has documented and done line drawing maps of the locations of orchids and colour-coded. Yeah?
It's up.
So if I want to switch from that,
yes,
I can go like that.
Cool.
Nice. So that's her book there. That's Alan's book, dedicated to her and for Alan for his tireless conservation work. Oh, fantastic. So I'm going to talk about the orchid flower, different types of orchids, quickly, hopefully, and then get on to the April to July flowering season and any questions, and hopefully amongst us there might be some answers to things. You've been given a handout that looks a bit like that. You'll be happy to know that I'm not going to talk about the full set of genera in the Sydney region or those that are available in the world, because there's 790 of them, but I will talk about 12 and the 38 species that are in flower in Royal right now. So see your handout and there'll be a quiz. So I haven't noted the common names as I'm going, so I'll be asking you for them. So you can keep referring, and if you got a pencil, you might want to scribble things on your own piece of paper. I'm not even going to, how you read this. Genus, species, common name. If it's got a month here, so that just tells you that Corona stylus, Rufa red midge, has been in flower since Feb, and it will go through to the end of May. According to Margaret's records, according to what's in her book. One of them has an asterisk against it, which anyone who's botanical, if you see an asterisk, you think, oh, weed. Well, this one's not a weed. This is just an asterisk for me to remember to point it out to you, because this Pterostylus longifolia, or the tall greenwood, shouldn't actually be in flower until, till about here, but it's in flower now up at Sublime Point, according to Michael Swire, and there are photos of it that he took last week. So there are photos from Michael Swire of Pterostylis longifolia, so it's a bit of an early year.
Global warming?
Who knows? So I've got a very, I took it off, a very weighty list of criteria of if you were to go through a botanical key, how would you get to the orchids and how would you get to Pterostylis and how would you get to the helmet orchids and all that. But I took it off. If you want to have a look at it later, I've got it as the last slide. But in summary, orchids belong to the monocots or the monocotyledons, but they're given this new name, Liliopsida now. So Opsida is the class ending. All of the Liliopsida have flowers in 3 parts. So 3 petals or 3 sepals, etc. So that's easy to see in lilies. If you know a lily flower, 3 bright petals and usually 3 sepals. Here comes the black cockies. And the same with iris, but less easy to see in things like grasses and in orchids. Someone else is coming. Oh, it's Joe. Cool. So, next one. Summary. Okay, this is your botany lesson. Orchids, I'll stand over just a second, have 3 sepals. So the code here, dorsal sepal, hello, lateral sepal. So back is dorsal, lateral is side, and the petals, 1, 2, and this one here that gets modified and swollen. So it gets a special name. Anything that gets modified in botany usually gets another name. So the modified petal in the middle is called the labellum, which is like a swollen lip. The column, and I'll get to each of these later, is this sort of reproductive bit in the middle. And they all sit above this point that joins it to a stem, and this is the ovary. So that's where the seeds are. So because the ovary is sitting below the point of attachment of all the rest of it, it's called an inferior ovary. It's inferior to that point of attachment. So if you're talking about a superior ovary, all of these petals and sepals would join back down here and she would sit above that point of attachment. So that's important later when you come to think about the fruit of an orchid or the capsule that releases its seed. So just bear that in mind, that that's where the ovary is sitting. And this column links to her in the centre here. We'll get to that too. So there are 3 sepals, 1 dorsal and 2 side ones, and the dorsal one, the rear one, remains free. But in some genera, like the greenhoods, it can fuse with the 2 side petals, but we'll also get to that. So they're front and side views.
Sorry. You're pretty.
So the 3 petals, the middle petal I've mentioned is modified into a swollen lip structure called the labellum. Insects are lured onto the labellum by various means. A desirable scent, dots or lines either in the visible or infrared spectrum as landing lights to insects, or nutritious pollen or some sweet nectar. Different orchids may have a single leaf like this Achianthus, or a little rosette of 2 or more or 6 little base leaves that just stay on the ground. So they're called a basal rosette of leaves. Or they might be up the stem, and anything coming off a stem is called corline. So our cauliflower that we eat is a flower that comes off the stem. That's why it's called cauliflower, because of the corline aspect. So corline leaves, basal rosette, or just a single leaf. So that's one way of dividing them all up. Some of them can have multiple combinations where they have both a basal rosette and leaves up the stem, but usually one or the other. Complication going on with the labellum. It can look like a big tongue like that, or it could have little specks and hairs and landing lights, as I said. So a labellum is uniquely decorated for the different genera and for different species within each of the genus's genera. It may mimic particular insect pollinators. It may have glands of various colours and textures. It might be insect-shaped or silicate hairs or outgrowths to guide the insects towards an irritable trigger point or a claw, that, like a trigger plant, if you know them, right at the back of the labellum, it gets tickled there. The labellum can either shift up through chemical transfer or the hood can come down. So I'll get to that too. Or there might be a plate of glands called a callus. Or that plate could be raised, like in the helmet orchids, it's got a little sort of mound in the centre, and each can trigger that labellum. So getting to the column, so this is the reproductive heart. So unlike other flowering plants that have anthers producing pollen, and in the centre you've got your style with the sticky stigma feeding the pollen down to the ovary. So that's the female part and the male part. But in orchids, the male part and the female part are really close. Here's the male part, this anther cap. Here's the female part, the sticky stigma. And in between is this thing called a visidium. So anything that's viscid is sticky. So the visidium is the thing that emits the scent. So if there's an insect or a female wasp smell or a fungal smell or something that's luring that pollinator in, it's coming from this thing in between. So that's the front view, these are the side views. So as a cut through, what's happening here at the stigmatic surface is that it's feeding all those dots, all those bits of pollen down, 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 down to the ovary, feeding it down to the little ovaries, the eggs that are in the ovaries. So that's the structure. You can have that column can look anything like this in any of the different genera that we have. And these have all come from Chappie's book there, David Jones. Oh, here's a little fun fact. Most orchids will just be cross-fertilised, cross-pollinated. So they'll only accept pollen, not from their own anther cap to their own stigma, but pollen from another flower. But this weird thing, the Calladenia plystanthes, it doesn't even bother to open because it self-pollinates. So some of the flowers will accept their own pollen in the absence of anything else and go, oh, yeah, all right, I'll have you now, only right near the end as the last resort. If there's no other pollen from any other flowers, right at the end of the stigmatic surface of life, she gets a bit less particular and just the chemicals in there just going, okay, I'll take whatever I can because I'm just about to die, and it's better to produce a selfing offspring than nothing at all. So that's what the selfing or autogamy is, and the cleistogamy is that they are closed to other things. And that's what this guy does. It just doesn't even bother opening because it will accept and only accept itself.
So when you talk about a life, is that a season or is it the life of the plant, the full number of years, which is
it's the generation that comes. So they can open again next year and they can go through all this process again next year. So, yeah, they might just shut down shop for this year, but most orchids will die away. So then they've got to produce a whole new flower spike. And it usually comes off a different part of the root nodule. So, yeah, it is death to that flower. It's not just closed up, hanging around for another 12 months, opens up again. It's gone.
So why aren't we overrun with those?
Well, have a think about it. They're probably clones.
Mm-hmm.
So in an evolutionary sense, they're not terribly diverse. So they're probably a little bit wonky. It's a technical term.
It's in the book.
And it's so primitive orchids in cross-section of their ovary have the seeds arranged like this. And we've only really got one orchid up in Queensland that does that, called apostasia. And I say apostasia with full confidence because later on we will talk about one of the species is called Coronastylus apostasioides because it is like the apostasia. Anything with oides in it, that's what that means. But other than that grass orchid apostasia, all our orchids hold their seeds on the outer rim of the single-chambered ovary. So you could think that that's a bit of an advantage from an evolutionary perspective because it's less complicated and it gets the seed out quicker. Once that capsule opens, seed's released. In this situation, every single chamber has to open separately and be released in a separate arrangement. So this one's just an open plan office, and this one's got your separate rooms. So as soon as the pollen is accepted by the stigma, a series of chemical reactions occur, and the growth hormone IAA, indole acetic acid, is triggered. Flowers wilt or drop, and flowers start to change colour. So there's a whole lot going on, and it happens pretty damn quickly because a capsule develops pretty quickly. So an ovary, remember, from this point up is where the sepals and petals were, and this is the ovary. And as she swells up, she becomes a fruiting capsule. So most of you will have seen, I hope, an orchid capsule, but if not, maybe when we go out together out bush, we'll see some. But there's some examples of different types of fruiting capsules of different orchids. Some of them retain parts of the flower at the top. If you think about an apple that we eat, the little bits that we see at the end of the apple core, they are the old sepals and the old petals, because it too is an inferior ovary. So it's a similar thing to like an apple, all those fruits that we eat pretty much in inferior ovaries. Another little fun fact down here, these helmet orchids, they produce a capsule. That's the other thing that happens too, that not only do the flowers start to shut down pretty well straight away, but other things trigger, including the enlargement of the ovary, but also a reorientation of the ovary. Ones that are sort of hanging down suddenly point upwards. If you know the Christmas lily, Blandfordia, thank you, Christmas bells, it does that too. The flowers are hanging like this, and then as they develop, their ovaries and fruits stand up. Conversely to that, some of the fruits that are standing up, they droop down, like these guys over here. So there's a reorientation of the ovary going on, and that's another point of division when you're sorting out one species from another in the key. Which way does the ovary face? It's weird doing that. I'm not sure. So in summary, we've got green ovaries enlarging to a dry, hard, fruited capsule over a space of weeks. So that's pretty fast development for a little plant. The capsules, I can't read that, and I've changed the word. Oh, that's not completely different. Capsules crack open along a linear suture, a bit like a pepper shaker, and the fertilised seeds release the spine dust that's easily wind dispersed to new locations. Okay, back to your handout. We're going to start looking at.
I want to know if that capsule is viable when it's green, or do you have to wait till it's dry? If someone in their own garden picked off a green capsule and tried to put it elsewhere into the garden, would that work? They wouldn't be mature enough as seeds?
I don't know.
Come on, Patsy.
I don't know. I could lie.
Very difficult.
It'll probably need the
sterile environment.
and the
It's an
fungi.
experiment. I know green tomatoes, the seeds are ripe when they're green, but most plants the fruition part and the development of sugars and things to get the seed out there, that's not for the plant's sake. Well, it is ultimately, but it's just to attract vectors to take it away. So it's a lure thing, the whole sugar thing and bright orange thing and the pretty thing. That's not to do with the plant's fertility.
So it could work as a green one with seeds in it.
But if you did a cross-section of that, it's going to be quite moist.
Yeah.
It won't be wind dispersed, but it needs to be dry to be wind dispersed. And so ready in that context, but the seed itself could be viable.
Try rubbing dendrobiums on the rock to see if something will come from it.
And as a scientist, what did you?
I don't know yet.
What was your sample size? So Acantha's is the first thing on our list. What's its common name? There's several of them. There's Exertus, there's Fornicatus, and Pusillus in flower at this stage. So they look like insects, insect-like species. So these photos, they're a little bit blurry. I just took them out of Marg's book. They're pointed, so that's what Acanthus means. They are colonial. They just all clump together in a big sort of metropolis. They're small but multi-flowered heads. So the arrangement of a flower is called the inflorescence. So I might refer to the inflorescence and how many flowers might be in each of those heads. And the single basal leaf is this love heart shape, and you might see thousands of them in the bush right now. And some of them might only have a little bit of a stem coming up. Did I just do something there? So the flower stalks are just developing for that one. So as far as our time frame, Exertus would be coming out now, or March and April. Fornicatus a bit later in May through to August, and Pusillus should be out now as well. Has everyone seen this one before? So calla just means glandular. So beautiful calli or beautiful gland is what calladenia means. The labellum, okay, so this is the labellum up here with these white little notches on it with this yellow tip sort of bent over. And it's got a little hood at the back, and the column is sitting down in here, sort of hidden there. So this is the landing pad for the insects, feeding down to the column where the trigger is, where the labellum might close or the hood might come over. So the labellum is 3-lobed. So you've got the yellow little lobe and 2 little side arms, and it's decorated with coloured calli or glands. The flowers are mostly singular, and there's only one of those calladenias out in this period, and that's Calladenia picta, which means coloured. And there's 3 colours to it. Green, so we're talking about the column is green, pink, red, and white. And the labellum's got 2 colours. So quite a colourful orchid for a single little flower.
That's why you're there, please. It doesn't seem to have that vertical sequence, does it? Is that, can you just do?
Yeah, it's at the back. This little green hood up the back is it here. Oh, sugar. I didn't know you could do that. Yeah. How do you get back in?
Where's Dave when you're there?
Come back to me.
It's a possible.
Yeah, go to the left-hand arrow and go back a slide.
Go back a slide. Okay.
That's it. Okay.
It's there. Just take my word for it. That's there.
I can see it. Then we've got the 4 sort
So
of.
they're alternating. So I'd say sepal, petals, sepal, petal. They are alternating, and this is a modified petal.
Is it such
3
as the
arranged
petals and the sepals?
So 4, 5, 6, and the little green thing is overshadowing.
And the vicissitude thing is just up and over.
It's between it's up inside with the anther cap and the sticky stigma and the basidium in between the 2. So it's a separate structure. It's not part of.
Just to clarify, you think, oh, sorry, two big leaf parts of them, they're like petals at the front with sepals to the right, or is it all one sort of a conglomeration there? Perhaps.
The sepals are petal-like.
Yeah.
So a lot of flowers that look like they have six petals are actually three sepals.
On the inside,
They're usually alternating, but orchids sort of morph around a little bit about which one comes out first.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter, they're functionally the same.
Yeah.
Usually when you turn a sepal or petal on the other side, it has a different colouring.
Yeah.
So you can actually tell which is which because they have a different morphology. There's anything more I want to say about that one? Kyloglottis, you might have seen. Common name of Kyloglottis, anybody?
Wasp orchid.
Yeah, that's sleeping. Yep, wasp orchid is one of them. And there's another one called turtle orchid because it does look a bit turtley. I don't know, no, not from my pictures, they're not. Anyway, Kyloglottis means a lipped throat in Greek, referring to the decorative opening of the labellum's throat. So this one's called Kyloglottis semi-nuda because it's half nude and then half dark, whereas that one is fully dark, the labellum. Colonial plants with solitary flowers and paired basal leaves. They have specific male insect pollinators that interact with the calli on the labellum, that's the black lobes on the labellum, that look and smell like their specific female insect. After pollination, the labellum closes up towards the column, shuts down shop. So Diphyla has dark calli all over the labellum and a dark plate that extends to the tip, and the semi-nuda is only half of the labellum has calli on it.
These are the ones that look like the turtle.
That's the turtley one. I don't.
Just the dark bit is
The naming of the common names of plants is just ridiculous. That's why I don't even bother going there half the time. Excellent. Grana stylus. Common name of it. What have we got? Midge. Yeah, you can have a freak midge, a dense midge, a glandular midge, or a fringed midge, or green midge, or red midge, or a dusk midge. So I've got a whole stack of them here. So you can see the similarity between them, quite small. The inflorescence is quite congested, some more congested than others, and the most congested is called denser for obvious reasons. So there's the Apotheoides one that's like the grass orchid that's mentioned earlier. It has less than 15 flowers and it's quite sort of open and quite green. Denser is quite dense, quite red to red-brown. Filiformis means it's file-like or skinny, and this one is Fimbriata. And anything with fimbri in it, it's usually frilly, the red hairs on it. So up to 30 flowers in the inflorescence. So I don't know if you could tell the difference between them out in the field. They all have a single leaf that sheathes the stem. Does that make sense to people? You've got a stem, and a sheath is like a column that sort of goes around that stem, and then it pairs off to the side like a grass blade. So when it's sheathing, and then it comes away and does its own thing. So you've got a stem with a sheath leaf going off. So it's got a single. So all of these have that sort of leaf. You're not going to tell which one's which until they flower. So they're all coming out now. We've got quite a few. These little helmet ones are so bizarre, the corybasses. If you haven't seen a corybas, you're in for a treat because they're bizarre. And there's a little 10-cent piece just to give it a bit of scale, and a mushroom. They're so beautiful. Solitary flowers on a solitary basal leaf with a dominant dorsal sepal, covering the lateral sepals and the lateral petals as a hood or helmet. Fertilised by a fungus gnat that's drawn to the flower via the basidium by a false scent from the flower that mimics their target fungus. So the fungus gnats are called that because they lay their eggs in fungus so that their little larvae had something to eat when they hatch. So they're looking for a particular fungus. This Corybas has cottoned onto this. Through evolution, it's developed a scent that mimics the smell of that fungus, and the fungus gnat comes and does the pollination job. So the short little flowering stem elongates after fertilisation, something I was going to mention earlier, but that's one of those indole acetic acid jobs that it triggers the ovary to grow. And remember where the ovary is, underneath this big helmet.
You can move that chair, that's it.
Oh, but I like the obstacle. Thank you. So the ovary's down here below the point of attachment. So this can swell and elongate. And what would be a benefit of the ovary getting taller? Exactly. And if there's anything that wants to eat it, it's more likely to see it if it's up a bit higher. But yeah, it's mainly gets it away from the moist soil as well, allows the ovary to dry out a bit more, seed gets released. So there's three there, three different sorts of Corybas, and here's another three. What did I want to say about those ones? So there's at least 6 Corybases that are out in this season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I've got 7. No, I've got 6 there. 3 there, 3 there. Could people see a difference between them? The round leaf, the colour of the leaf, whether it's veiny and dry looking or glossy, that's often a thing. Margaret Bradhurst, are you online, Margaret? I was hoping she would be. She's amazing. She can spot a basal leaf at, 20 paces. Oh, look at that Corybas over there. Incredible. So, she and I went travelling a lot around Royal back in the day, looking for orchids and documenting them, especially when we're going to put a fire in, and I'd have to then go to the boss and say, can't do it. They go, yeah, sure. But often we cordon off an area and not burn an area until particular orchids have finished their flowering. And power line easements, orchids often love it to be really out in the open and a bit more sunshine. So power line easements are often sort of hot spots for orchids. Okay, this one's common name, Eriochilus. There's only one out at this season. Parson's bands, so the old-fashioned parson with their white bands coming down. There used to be considered separate species that would hybridize with each other, and now they've just called them Eriochilus or Eriochilus cucullatus complex, meaning a whole lot of species can accept each other's pollen. They're probably all a bell curve of the same species, but the whole naming of things is such a human invention anyway. It's quite arbitrary. But this one is part of a complex of different Eriochiluses that will change from white through to pink, and some have yellow tips on the end of their petals and sepals, but primarily they're all looking pretty similar. They're a rock-loving orchid with a single dark green basal leaf that has a long point to it. So this is it down here. Ooh, but there's a little nipple off the edge of the leaf. All of them have this little nipple going off the end of the basal leaf. Its flower can stand 12 centimetres tall, so it's still quite small. And the lateral sepals are prominent and white. The labellum is curled back or recurved, so that's what's going on here. If it wasn't recurved, it would be quite long, but it's sort of bent over back that way. Not quite sure why, but it just is. And covered with stiff red and white hairs. The next one. Oh, have you seen those ones? Yep. I think
Royal blossom.
these are all in royal. No specific locations will be mentioned. They like a bit of laterite, so that's as far as I'm going to say. So the geologists in the room will go straight there. Right. This is our endangered one, Genoplesion boweri. I haven't seen this in the wild. I know where it should be living, and I've never seen it, but a lot of people have. So all Genoplesia are closely related to Prassophyllum, which is another one that's looking quite sort of horizontal and pointed like that picture indicates. But there's a single species, this boweri, that remains set aside and listed as endangered under New South Wales legislative protection. It's saprophytic. Anyone know what saprophytic means?
Dead.
It likes dead things. So it lives off sort of rotting vegetation. It has a single stem clasping leaf, so that's a bit the same as a sheathing leaf. So it clasps the, well, it's more like, have you got a pen? Thanks.
No, it's all right.
Pencil, whatever it is, the thing. So stem clasping just means that the leaf starts on the other side of the stem, but most of it is on this side. So it sort of clasps the stem, but then most of it is on, that side. So there's a particular term for that in botany, but stem clasping will do.
The question, Gina, no, how you say it?
Genoplesium.
Genoplesium. Can you break that down? Do you know what that stands for? Because there's a genoplesium in the.
That's a gaita, though.
Yeah.
That's a bit different. Nope, I'll get back to you on that. I don't know.
Just follow it.
Why is it called brittle?
The upright stem can break quite easily. So that's why. Is that its common name? Brittle midge. There we go. Genoplesium. Greek, genos, means race or kind, as in genus.
So
Like
I know that's right.
Venus and plesos is affinity. So referring to the close relationship it has with the genus Prassophyllum.
Okay.
So it's just akin to Prassophyllum.
Yep.
Brittle. No, Mark doesn't mention why it's called brittle, but I know that they do break and they can be damaged by wallabies and all sorts of things. Deer probably, but we don't want to mention that four-letter word, do we? Prassophyllum, next one. No, that's it. Yeah, so this is Prassophyllum striatum, and anything that has the word striatum in it is striated or stripy. So that's why it gets that name. There's only one species in flower at this time, and that's this striatum. They have a single leaf, clasps at 20 centimetres high, can have up to 10 terminal flowers in the spike arrangement. Okay, then the most common one that we all know is green hoods. So I mentioned right at the beginning how the lateral sepal, so I'll just explain what's going on here. The green hood, or the galea, is in fact a fusion of the dorsal sepal with the two side petals. So if you ever see a green hood, you'll see that there are two different colours on the side, and you've got an outer dorsal sepal and the two side petals that are actually fused together. That one's been cut through to give you a little bit of a picture of what's going on in that complicated little head. Here's the column feeding down to the inferior ovary at this point. So we've got the pollinium, which is the little pollen conglomeration, because orchids don't just produce a single pollen grain. They have these little packets of pollen called pollinia. So they're like a little clump of them that they bung onto an insect as it comes through. Stigma, petal, and what else can we point out? 3 points. Labellum hinge. So that's a little trigger point down there. The two lateral sepals, I've mentioned that. Size, shape, colour, and orientation of the hood. The way that the labellum is sitting, and the two front sepals where they divide from each other forms a V notch, which they often call the sinus, and it depends how long those two whether they go upwards or outwards or sidewards or whatever. I feel like I'm one of those flag guys at the airport. So they got the semaphore.
And what's the function of the basal appendage?
The function of the basal appendage, I don't know. I guess it's part of the trigger. It's not a reproductive feature. It's probably, just part of that trigger. Dunno.
That's syncephalum.
Syncephalum. So it's just a fused sepal. Yep. So these are two separate petals, sepals, but they are fused at this point. That's what's called a syncephalum, as opposed to the bit where they're both free, which are called the free points. It's a bit technical, that picture. That's a bit simpler. So, green hoods, there's a whole stack of them that you probably have seen and not realising perhaps the variety of things that you're looking at. So hopefully you can see these are those sepals. That's the free points going up. Some of them, these are all sort of going up, but there's some on these pages where they are either outwards or downwards. So the size of the hood, the colouring, the striations, whether it's white or translucent, or how long this tip is, whether it's all the way down or just pointed out. So there's a whole lot of different variations to the Pterostylis species combinations. Acuminata has a pointed acuminate head tip to the hood. Alveata, translucent with some white stripes, and the free points have got brown tips on them. Conchina. Next page, grandiflora. That one's called the cobra. Grandiflora, cobra, green hood. These 3 pictures there. Some of these are from Michael Swire. The longifolia and the cobra one are from him. The rest are Margaret's. They're great pictures. So this one's called a small nodding orchid. There is a Pterostylis nutans, which is called the nodding, I just call it noddy, but it's a nodding green hood, much bigger than this one, but Hispidula is the small, tiny nodding green hood. So some of them are quite bulbous, the hoods, and others are quite, like the cobra, quite sort of splayed out. So there's a bit of variation. And the other thing that varies with these, is that, like the Illawarra green hood, their basal leaves live all year round, except when they're flowering. Once they start to put up their flowering spike, there's not enough energy in the plant to do both. So the leaves have done their job to produce this flowering spike, they wither away and die. So often you end up just having this flower stalk with nothing. You think, how the hell did that produce itself? But it's done its job, it's produced this, can't do both, leaves go. Okay, and there's some more green hood. I'll carry on. And that's the smallest of them. It's in a big, you can see most of it is enclosed. It'd have to be quite a small little insect to sort of crawl in there and to be the lure, to be lured into there. What is pollinating that one? Have I written that? So that's parviflora. So the thing about that one is that it's hanging onto this neck, the old part of the flower. Most of them drop that at this point and just have this sort of oval dried capsule. This one's probably one that everyone has seen before, this bright, like lurid pink and white. Only the labellum is white The rest of it is pink. So Austral ladies' tresses is its common name, Sporanthes, because it has this spiral growth arrangement up the stem, quite spectacular. So that's it for the terrestrial orchids. They are the ones that live in dirt. So they just live on the ground, under trees, in shady patches, out on power line easements, whatever. But these guys like to live on other plants or on rock. So they can have two different types of growth. One's with these pseudo bulbs. So these are sort of like little onions that have got sort of stages of growth. So that'll die back to there and just sit there as a little dormant, withered thing, and then it'll come back to life in the next season and just carry on. And it's on a rhizome with roots below. This one only has roots and it doesn't have that storage capacity. So you get ones like Pectorrhiza and Sarcochilus looking like this, but this one is a bit more advanced, and that's the one that is our main type that we get around here. So all of them have that. So a little bulbophyllum, or what's its common name? Autumn bulbophyllum. That's not much of a common name. Or Cestichus, which is the next one. But you can see the little pseudo bulb here, these little succulent things. That's a whole plant in itself. What else can I say? Lithophytic, meaning on rock. And Cestichus. What's its common name?
Yellow rock orchid.
Yeah, it's also called tomcats because it smells like cat's piss. The flower emits a urine-like smell which attracts flies that aid in the pollination of the flower. So you usually can smell that one before you see it. Quite subtle. So that's pretty much it. My take-home message is that the terrestrial, epiphytic and lithophytic orchids in this area are very weird and they're very beautiful, and consequently they're very threatened because people like to look at them, keep them, collect them, take them. So get out there in the bush, have a look at them, but don't tell people where you've seen them.
So how do you find them?
Well, you just have to talk to people and go bush and
You've got to look down.
You've got to look.
I was trying to find the Bowerite because I found the other.
Mm-hmm.
When I say the other, I think even Margaret's book calls them Genoplesia.
Yeah, there are others.
No, I mean the Corona stylus is still called Genoplesium in iNaturalists. It gets a bit confusing. But they are
it's
both
very
called
confusing,
mutual.
the naming, and this guy's caused the confusion. He's totally reorganised a lot of them.
Yeah.
But he's seeing differences between them
But
from a
Corona
genetic
stylus
level.
name has come later. Yeah, right. This is
Yeah, I don't want to
Right.
make a mention which one comes first.
Yeah.
But I do want to honour Margaret very much. She's not too fond of going out these days, so I'm here instead of her, and I've gone to see her several times. She's well, but she just doesn't like going out. She's a fabulous person, and if you get a chance to reach out to her at any time, she's really happy to speak to people. And Alan, as I said, has passed now, and he was amazing, quite a full-on character, very sort of passionate conservationist, and pretty down on a lot of consultant ecologists and national park people who were not doing the searching for orchids thoroughly enough. When I met him in my job as a Nowra area ranger years ago, he was pretty horrified at the lack of knowledge that us rangers had, and the managers, that we had little appreciation of how much orchids represent diversity and health of a place. But no, he was a very knowledgeable man, and his book's here, so please come and have a look at that. And take one of them home, and if you want extra ones, and if you'll have me back, I'll come and do August to December another time. So I'm not in the process.
That's it. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. consider becoming a volunteer yourself to help keep this iconic gem for future generations.